Hello, everybody. We are continuing our series on the nutrition guidelines women over 40 actually need. And this episode is such an important one because we are talking about blood sugar. Now, before you tune this out thinking, well, I don't have diabetes, so this probably doesn't apply to me, I want you to stay with me because blood sugar affects far more than diabetes. In fact, unstable blood sugar can influence your energy, your cravings, your mood, sleep, hormones, inflammation, fat storage, brain fog, anxiety, and even how well your body handles stress. And many women are experiencing blood sugar dysregulation long before lab work ever shows diabetes. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings I've seen women over 40. Many women assume blood sugar only matters if their doctor diagnoses them with diabetes, their glucose is extremely high, or they're maybe taking some kind of medication for it. Blood sugar instability often starts earlier in more subtle ways with things like afternoon crashes, waking up exhausted, needing caffeine to function or feeling like you need caffeine to function, intense cravings, shakiness when meals are delayed if you wait too long to eat, if you're irritable when you get hungry, if you have brain fog not long after you eat your meals, waking up in the middle of the night and tossing and turning, cannot go back to sleep, difficulty losing weight despite eating healthy, or that constant feeling of hunger. Those can all be signs the body is struggling with blood sugar regulation. And after 40, this conversation becomes even more important because now we've got hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause that can reduce your insulin sensitivity even further. Now, what this means is that the body is just not able to process carbohydrates the same way that it used to. And at the same time, many women are losing muscle mass. They're under chronic stress. They're sleeping so poorly. They're over consuming processed foods and under eating protein. That is one of the biggest ones I'm seeing, or they are skipping meals. All of those things can worsen your blood sugar stability. Now, let's just simplify this for a minute. When we eat carbohydrates, they break it down into glucose, and glucose is not the bad thing here. Your body actually needs glucose for energy. The issue is not the carbohydrates themselves. The issue is how rapidly glucose rises and crashes throughout the day and how often that happens. Because when blood sugar spikes, the body releases insulin to help bring it back down. And if this spike is large and frequent, and women often are experiencing this roller coaster afterward that includes symptoms like fatigue, cravings, hunger, poor focus, and the need for more sugar or caffeine to feel better again. It's a vicious cycle and it's hard to stop it. This cycle actually becomes exhausting to the body. It's another stressor that's added to your body and exacerbates your stress hormones. This is huge. This is a big factor in how people are feeling on the day to day. You can eat a perfectly healthy meal and still have blood sugar disruption if you are chronically stressed, sleeping poorly, overtraining, constantly rushing, or living in survival mode. Because cortisol, your primary stress hormone, increases blood sugar. Why? Because biologically, stress signals the body that it may need to access some quick fuel. So when women say, I barely eat and I still can't lose weight, sometimes the conversation is not simply about calories. Sometimes the body is under chronic physiological stress. Now, another thing I want to address is the idea that blood sugar only happens in people who eat a lot of junk food or are older. This is just not true. I see this in younger people and I see this in people who are eating healthy foods. I see women will spike their blood sugar with foods that they think are extremely healthy, and that can look like smoothies that are loaded with a lot of fruit and very little protein, oatmeal all by itself, granola added to different things like yogurt or other types of breakfasts, juice, if you consume juices, dried fruits, and gluten-free processed snacks. In the quest for eating a gluten-free diet for a lot of people, they rely on a lot of processed packaged foods for that, and that will spike blood sugar. Low-fat yogurts with the berries and the cookies and the things that are a part of those and marketed a lot of times towards kids, and things that we think of are healthy, like smoothie bowls, acai bowls, that kind of thing, they can be loaded with sugar. And even if you just have a black coffee and a muffin for breakfast, you more than likely are going to spike and crash your blood sugar. Many women are unintentionally starting the day with a massive blood sugar spike and then the crash that follows. And that's why you may feel shaky by 10 a.m. You are raiding the vending machines by 10 o'clock. You crave sugar in the afternoon. You can barely stay up in the afternoon. You're so exhausted. And you maybe cannot stop snacking at nighttime. Now, does that mean women should fear, or anybody actually should fear carbohydrates? Absolutely not. This is where the nuance matters. Carbohydrates are not the enemy, even though it maybe feels like it sometimes. They are not the enemy. The goal is blood sugar stability, and that is the focus. And often that comes after balancing meals better, meaning instead of eating carbohydrates alone, we need to combine them with protein, healthy fats, make sure they're full of fiber and nutrients to slow the glucose response. And the types of carbohydrates matter. This helps the body process your energy way more steadily and you feel better for it. One of the biggest things I see women do is I help them with eating protein at breakfast. I know it sounds super simple, but it's often the place to start. Instead of eating coffee alone, just having a couple pieces of toast, even if it's sourdough with avocado, you need to have some protein with it. And for sure, those who are relying on cereals or pastries, we need to do things like switching towards eggs, Greek yogurt, smoothies that include enough protein. You can add cottage cheese or just eat some leftovers that had your protein in it from the night before. This can drastically improve your cravings, your focus, your energy, and your appetite for sure later in the day. Now, let's talk briefly about something called insulin resistance because this term gets misunderstood a lot. Insulin resistance does not happen overnight. It develops gradually over time. And women can experience mild insulin resistance long before glucose numbers become severely abnormal. So that's why you will be told all your labs look great, they look normal because your glucose number is, but no one is looking at your insulin and often not looking at A1C either. So common signs that you may be insulin resistant include increased belly fat, fatigue after meals, sugar cravings, energy crashes, elevated triglycerides, difficulty losing weight, skin tags, waking during the night, or feeling constantly hungry. And importantly, this insulin resistance is strongly connected to inflammation, stress, sleep, and muscle mass. And this is why strength training becomes paramount to your health, especially after the ages 30, 35, 40, something like that. That is where this needs to be a part of your day-to-day. Now, muscle acts almost like a storage site for glucose. The more metabolically healthy muscle you have, the better the body often handles your blood sugar. This is another reason why endless cardio and chronic undereating will eventually backfire because preserving muscle supports your metabolic health. Now, I also want to say something that I think women need to hear. Cravings are not always about the lack of willpower. People say this all the time. They beat themselves up for it. Sometimes cravings are biological signals of feeling like the body is underfed or sleep deprived or stressed. Maybe your blood sugar is unstable or maybe your body is just nutrient depleted. These cravings will often intensify in those situations. So, when many women blame themselves instead of asking, what is my body trying to tell me? We don't stop and listen, and it's usually screaming at us to tell us something. So, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few very practical starting points. You do not need perfection. You do not need extreme dieting. You do not need to cut out all of the carbs. But before you begin supporting your blood sugar, you can start to add these things consistently over time. Eating protein consistently, avoid skipping meals, improving your sleep, managing your stress, building muscle, walking after meals, and balancing meals more intentionally. These small shifts can make a massive difference in your energy, your cravings, your hormone balance, your mood, and for sure your metabolism as well as long term health. Thanks for listening to this episode today. If this episode helped you understand your body in a new way, please share it with another woman who may need this conversation. And if you want more support around blood sugar, energy, hormones, and metabolism, check out the resources linked in the notes. And next time, we are going to be talking about why eating less stops working after 40. And honestly, I think that episode is going to challenge a lot of outdated beliefs that we have carried for way too many years. I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.